Hi, I'm Linda, and this is No Frills ASMR. I posted a video a couple days ago looking at the newspaper, and I don't recall now, but there was some commentary during that video about restaurants and how I used to work at Red Lobster. All that to say, in the comments, a commenter by the name of Songtree said, have you watched The Bear? And maybe you should do a video on Michelin Star restaurants. And I haven't, well, I watched one episode of The Bear years ago, but I don't remember. It was very chaotic. And that kind of show, I kind of need to watch when my husband's not around because he's got some neurological stuff. It makes it hard for him to see that. So I never went back to it. But I have watched Top Chef since the beginning, every episode. And I remember when they talked about a little bit about the history of the Michelin Star, and I was like, what? Because I didn't know. Now I think nowadays everybody knows the story about Michelin. But back then I had never heard it. Anyway, so I just thought, yeah, that's kind of a fun one to look into. So I thought we could talk about Michelin stars, a little bit of history and a little bit of what it takes to get one. I just did a minimal amount of research this morning, so I'm no expert, but it's just some fun to talk about. And if you're curious, you can always go Google it. But from what I saw, it appears that the original Michelin, well, first of all, the original Michelin was Michelin Tire Company, which is still in business today, I think. And they were in France. And they started the tire company in 1889. And in that year, I think there were two brothers, Edward and Andre Michelin. That was my French. But they created the, what do you call him, mascot, the Michelin tire man, tire guy. What does he call that? Michelin man. And it's kind of interesting because the tires back then in their original 1800s tires were white. And so apparently, like, these tires were all stacked on top of each other. And the one brother was like, hey, you throw some arms on that, it'd be a man. So they created it really early on. And here's like a French poster with the Michelin man. And here's, I assume that's a real photo from back then. I don't know. But so that is the original Michelin man. But let's look at our more current rendering, because you guys know him. There he is. So Michelin Tire Company was making tires for bicycles. Oh, this is kind of interesting because it shows it through the years. And they even made it for the Paris train. But then when cars came around, at first cars didn't have inflatable tires. But I think they like invented the first car tire. But this was in 1890. By 1900, Michelin started to publish a tour, kind of like a guide for your road trips, a travel guide. And this was for France in the beginning, but then it moved out towards Europe. And they would show you restaurants you could go to. I think it had places you could stay. And it was all in a pretty smart like push for people to start taking road trips in their cars with their tires that they'd have to replace and buy new tires. So, there's a reason. But anyway, so they started making these travel guides. And by 1926, I think in the year 1926, they started to put stars on the restaurants based on how good they were, how delicious they were. And by 1930, let me get one more note card, hold on. By 1930, they had a 3-star system. So, dang, I don't like this pen. 1800 up here. I think I threw away the wrong one. So there was 1 star. That's a bad star. Okay. 2 stars and 3 stars. 3 stars is the best. But they're all good. I assume some restaurants they didn't give stars to. They were just listed. And it's sort of like, if any of you are familiar with AAA, they give diamonds. They used to have tour books for AAA, and they'd have diamonds. But Michelin uses stars. And the system they used was completely anonymous, even back, in the 1800s. So, like, just because you were friends with one of the restaurant owners, the star's really bad. I don't know how to make it look good. It didn't mean you'd get a star because they sent people anonymously. So it became a very trusted source for review of restaurants and coveted by restaurants, because if you had a Michelin star, or especially 2 or 3 stars, you'd get a lot more customers come through your restaurant. So that's sort of the history of it. So the Michelin star system is a 3-star system. So what 1 star generally meant was that you have top quality, and I don't mean generally meant, I mean now, it means today, that you have top quality ingredients and consistent high standards. And it's hard to even get 1 star, I believe. That's, not all restaurants get that. But if you have 2 stars, then you have these things. Plus, I'm sorry, hold on. There's a string hanging down. I was rubbing my leg and it felt like something crawling on me. Just give me the grief. Okay. If you have 2 stars, then you have the top quality ingredients, high standards, but also the personality or talent of the chef will start to show through. Personality of chef. Okay, we'll just put that. Starts to be evident. And it goes a little beyond high standards, and they call it expertly crafted. So we'll put expertly. So if you get 2 stars, that's pretty good. Okay, but then a 3-star is what they call superlative cooking. It is when a chef is at his peak. And I would say from watching Top Chef, it's when you can taste the food and first of all, that it's excellent in every sense. And you know exactly which chef has created that food for you. Without even in a blind taste, you'd say that's that chef. And the food is then elevated to an art form. So those are basically the 3 standards. And you can go, there's a website you can Google where you can see all the different Michelin restaurants. But they're they're only in very large cities. I was going to say, I looked in Boston because I'm going to Boston, and they don't have them there. But there are a bunch in New York City, I think Washington, D.C., Miami. So it's big cities, I guess, with a lot of restaurants, but you're not going to find them in smaller places. Now in Europe, I don't know. Maybe it's different there. They may have a lot more. And then there's a type of Michelin restaurant that I thought was kind of cool called and I might spell this wrong because I heard it rather than saw it. You know what I'm saying? I think it would be spelled this way. It's a bib gourmand. Ooh, that's sloppy. And what that is high quality but at a reasonable price. Now that's my kind of restaurant. But I bet reasonable might be different for them than it is for me. I don't know. Probably not like Chipotle level reasonable. Anyway, so yeah, so if you go to like a 3-star Michelin restaurant, you should have an unforgettable dining experience. It should be remarkable across the entire menu, an innovative, like art level of experience. But one thing I did read is they don't consider decor, like the decor of the restaurant or table setting or service in the rating. See, that's I almost I almost look at service as more important to my experience than the food. Like sometimes I can have okay, just fine food. But if the service is so good, you're like, well, I had such a great time because the service was just great. So if I went to a restaurant like this and had like bad service, which I'm sure you wouldn't because you're spending so much money, but that would stink. That would stink. But they don't take that into consideration. So I was reading about how they do this, and apparently, like, it's very anonymous and secretive, very secretive. But some kind of, I won't call them whistleblowers. What do you call them? Like people who've come out after doing this. And it's supposed to be kept secret. But they've come out and told you a little bit. And so one thing is they usually eat alone. So it'll be one person by themselves. So if you work at a fancy restaurant, this is what you're looking for. And they always order an appetizer, an entree, and a dessert. And they're usually items that kind of, show the chef's point of view, things that the chef is known for. So they try to actually order to the chef's specialty, let's say. And they then meet up. I think that's what they said. So they're all individual. They're completely anonymous. When they meet, they'll say like meet on 3rd Street and Vine, and then they go there and they don't know who each other are, and they like give information. I don't know. It's all bizarre. And they said the inspectors, who are the anonymous people, they're not supposed to tell their friends or their parents or their spouse or anyone. And they eat out 200 days a year. What? But they're going to all these fancy restaurants. Part of me is like, that's fun. But most of me is going, I wouldn't want to have to eat out 200. And they have to go through a training and apprenticeship program that is also completely anonymous. So it's like Mission Impossible. Now, this all came from somebody who claimed they were one of these tasters. But I think the Michelin Star people are like, that's not right. But I don't know. I don't know whether it is or not. But this one guy, his name was like Pascal Remy. He kept a diary of all the restaurants he went to. And when somehow the Michelin people found out he had this diary, because he said he was keeping it so he could write a book later, and they fired him. And so he did write like a tell-all book about it. And he claims that they don't go and re-review all these restaurants every year because they just don't have enough people to do it. So they'll have 3 stars and they'll stick the 3 stars on them again without checking it again. So I don't know. Anyway, kind of interesting. And then I heard stories about, and I hadn't really thought about this, but you're like working so hard, like on the Bear, I think is the storyline, to get the Michelin star. And your drive is to get the stars. But then if after you have it and you're still working everything, if you lose a star, that could like kill your business. if you lost your Michelin star, because they supposedly re-review. I just said supposedly, right? Yeah, re-review your restaurant every year. But if you lost your stars, that would suck. What else did I read about? There was one thing that they said is kind of a weird thing. They have a thing called a green star they started putting on restaurants that shows that they have sustainable gastronomy, practices. But apparently some of these chefs claimed that they just called and said, "Are you doing sustainable?" And the chef said yes. And they were like, "Okay, great, you get a green star." But so I don't know, but the Michelin people say, well, we go to the restaurant multiple times and we read their menu and we hear about their sustainability from their staff and we eat the food. We have an idea and then we call them to verify. And yeah, that's, so that feels okay to me, I think. I don't know. But with anything where there's a lot of secrecy like this, I think there is always a little bit of a concern that, people could be paying people off. There could be a lot of money going into it, and there need to be things. But I don't know. Some people say. But either way, I think it's probably a good way of knowing if you're going to a top quality restaurant. I don't think that I've ever been to any Michelin restaurant in my life that I know of. I mean, I'm sure I'd know. I don't think so. I assume they're all pretty pricey. I don't know if you've been to any of these types. Let me know in the comments. Let me know if I should go. Yeah. I don't think I'm sure I haven't. When would I have gone? Probably not. No. But I would. I think that my friend's daughter is currently working. I think she's a pastry chef at a Michelin. I don't know how many stars it has, but a Michelin restaurant. Or maybe it's a James Beard award. That's a different, because I don't think hers is in a big city. I'm not sure. But they said they couldn't, it's their daughter. And they're like, we can't afford to go. It's too expensive. I was like, oh, that's a bummer. Anyway, yeah. This is my style. So, I don't know. I feel like I should have more to say, but I don't know if I do. So we have a 1 star, 1 Michelin star, which is still very good. And oh, I know what they do say. They say a 1 is worth the stop. A 2 is worth a detour, and a 3 is worth a special trip. So if you happen to be in town, this is high quality cooking. And the dishes are carefully prepared with fresh ingredients. And the technique is solid. A 2 Michelin star is refined and inspired dishes, precision in execution and presentation, and the chef shows a real mastery or personal style, while a 3 star is an unforgettable dining experience, remarkable consistency across the entirety of the menu, and dishes show innovation, depth, and harmony. See, on this note I have, it says service and ambiance match the quality of the food. But then they said that service doesn't count, so I'm confused. Anyway, Michelin star. Yeah, I need to know. Has anybody been to a 3 star? Was it like the most amazing thing you ever had in your life? Tell us all about it. I saw this one that's like the most, the most northern Michelin star. Or maybe it was the hardest to get to. I forget. But it's like in Denmark or something, and you have to take a boat there, a ferry. But when the glacier ice comes around, then you have to take a helicopter or something. It was cuckoo bananas. But one of the things, they have like a, I don't know, 10-course meal or something. But one of the things on the menu was raw whale skin, or maybe it was whale blubber. And then there were other things that I was like, I don't know if I could even eat it. I mean, I'm sure it probably is delicious, but just the thought of that makes me go, eee. But that's because I don't have a refined enough palate, really. I don't know. I guess you have to try things to see. Anyway. All right, I don't know. I feel like I should have more to say, but so the stars part started in 1926, and it was the tire company, and they were making free